lovely people, welcome back to my channel. It's Kanisha. If you're new around here, my name is Kanisha and I create video content on business, career, university, and so if you like the sound of that, go ahead and hit the subscribe button below. Today's video is all about my placement experience during my 4-year degree course at Swansea University, and I thought I'd talk about this because I know when I was during my first year and second year, I really could have benefited from hearing from another student what their year experience was like, so that I'd know what to expect and the kind of timelines to look at. So hopefully this might be beneficial for you if you're either in your first year, second year, or at sixth form debating whether to do a 4-year degree course or a 3-year programme. So to start off, I figured I'd explain what a placement year is. Here in the UK, some degree programmes actually allow you to take a 4-year programme, which means in your third year you can either do a study abroad, so you go to a partnering university in another country and complete certain modules, or you have the option to work for an employer for a year-long programme. So typically students make this decision at the beginning of their course, so when they're doing their application to universities, they know then that they want to do this additional year, or some make the decision during the first year that this is something that they want to do. So there is a bit of flexibility when it comes to when you can make this decision. But for me personally, I knew I really wanted to do a 4-year program just because I'd been told by many people how valuable it was for them to work in an organization and have an idea of what they wanted to do once they graduated. So that's definitely one of the things that appealed to me, but also the fact that you could earn money during my time at university, that was a big motivator. So that definitely is another reason why I was really attracted to being able to do a year in industry. And to be fair, I did contemplate doing a study abroad because I had my eyes set on going to Australia for some time. So I thought if I could be able to study at an Australian university, I get to experience what living there is like and also get some education from there as well. So it really was one of those things that I had to think about, but in the end I did choose a placement year. So coming into my first year and knowing that I wanted to do this, my university did make it clear that I would need to get a certain amount of credits in order to be eligible to do the placement year. So this was a combination of credits in my first year and second year in order for me to be eligible to do it in my third year. And in terms of finding the placements, that took place in my second year of university. So around September, October time, that's when majority of the applications opened up. So whether this was in finance, business, anywhere, organizations that took on students, they opened up this application window around then. So it was communicated by our lecturers and employability team that this process would go on for maybe weeks to even months. So it wouldn't be a case of being disheartened if you haven't secured something by December, which is what I'd hoped I'd be doing. Throughout September, October, November, all the way up until February, I was doing a lot of applications and interviews just to find a potential place for me to go in July. And so that's the typical timeline for students when they're looking for their placement year. So to speak on my personal experience myself, my journey looks a bit different to other students. And the reason for that is because I actually ended up working for myself during my placement year. And I think there was only 2 other people in my year group that did something like me, where they basically set up their own businesses and they ran them as their placement year. So around semester 1 and semester 2, I realized that I actually could set up this business and run it myself. And I thought, let me take that leap of faith, considering I hadn't secured a placement yet, to actually setting up this business and running it for my placement year. And let me not front, this decision was nerve-wracking. And the reason for that was because no one else that I knew of at the time was going to do what I was going to do. Like, I had friends who'd secured placements with big organizations where they were going to earn at least 20 to 25k for the year. And I was making that decision to set up a business which I had at that time no idea whether it was going to pay me money or if I was going to make any money. And the second thing was not knowing whether this would actually still be running within a year's time. So I kept thinking to myself, what if I start this placement year in August and by the time it becomes March again, there might not be no business for me to run and I could potentially, you know, not have anything to do for the remaining months and not pass this placement year, because the 4 placement years, they're actually graded and assessed. And depending on what your college or university does, the assessment methods are different. So my concern was, would I be able to get a good grade from running my own business in the same way that my peers who work for organizations might be able to get a good assessment. So those main three things were running through my head was, was I going to make any money? Like, I could be broke for a year. And two, would I still be having something to do in March the following year? And three, how would this affect my assessment compared to like my peers and what I could potentially achieve? So I definitely did have to weigh out those three things for myself and figure out, was this something for me and could this work? But long story short, I decided to take the risk and just go ahead and do it because I was on an entrepreneurship pathway and I always knew that I wanted to start my own business at some point. So I figured, why not give it a year go where I 100% committed myself to this idea to see whether this was something that I wanted to do long term and learn from myself what I could do. And also I recognised that there's actually a lot of skills that I could have benefited from gaining by doing this placement year, as I'd be doing things like marketing, operations, logistics, networking, just a whole breadth of skills that I might not have got if I was just in a particular role at an organisation. So yeah, once I got those fears aside and managed to set up with my university that I could do this, I started in September, so the first week of September, and I actually based myself in Swansea, so that was where my university was, because my target audience were Swansea students, so I figured why not just stay there. And it also gave me access to my university, my lecturers, and also familiar environment, so I wouldn't have to worry too much about like settling in and figuring out accommodation, as I'd just continue to live with the people that I knew already. So that was really reassuring and made it a lot easier. And so because I set up my own business and I was the founder and director, that is what I basically call my job title. And the day-to-day for this role looked different every single day. Like, as cliche as it sounds when people say that about running your own business, honestly, it's so true. Like, one day it would have been researching what website to set up this platform on. Another day might be going like door to door to businesses and trying to sign them up to joining the platform. Another day we think about finance and how do I secure finance, or how do I do the accounting for the business. So every single day looked so different to each other and required me to just learn a lot more about things that I might not have done had I worked for someone else. But if you want to see like a week in my life, I actually managed to record a video that time in my life, so you can see it up here, so hopefully it comes up either side. I always made sure it was a minimum of 40 hours a week, but the hours in which I did those 40 hours were flexible to me. So sometimes it'd be a lot more just because it was only me running the business, so I had to pick up in a lot of places that I might have had someone else help me with. So my hours really varied each week, and it was quite dependent on what I wanted to do within that week or the business needs. In terms of how much I was paid, I think the most that I was paid for my business by the end of it was £100. Like, it wasn't a lot of money. Like, there's so much of my own personal finance that I poured into the business to build the website, to get marketing done, and money that I won from competitions to help that I like put back into the business. I ended up not making a lot of money for myself, actually no money for myself, just because of the nature of the platform. It was all about raising money for charities, and for me that was the motivator. It wasn't so much the financial side of things. I was just motivated by the fact that I was helping charities, helping students save money, and yeah, that was enough for me at that time. And I think, to be honest, I need to recognise my privilege that I had as well at the time, where I didn't have the concern of paying for rent, so my parents supported me with my rent, and also I didn't have anyone else dependent on me, so I was able to use the money that I got from student finance to help cover the upkeep for myself in that year, and it worked out to be just about enough. There were definitely times when I had to pick up a few extra jobs, so around February, between January to April, I had like 2 part-time jobs whilst also trying to run my own business. So I definitely had to make money elsewhere in order for me to be able to focus on the platform and not put the pressure on the platform to make me money. So that's really the difference between myself and people, my friends who did a year in industry for a company, was that they had a regular income whilst I didn't. So that's something to keep in mind if you are choosing to set set up your own business and run your business as your placement year is that there is that element of risk that you might not get as much financial return compared to your peers. But honestly, it's what motivates you. That's the biggest question and answer for yourself. So when I think of like what a highlight for me was in that year, I definitely would say it was actually to see what my own capabilities were. So I always kind of had this idea that I set up my own business, so I would run my own business, but I didn't know if I had that entrepreneurial drive that was so emphasized in my lectures and in the conversations I would have with people. Like, they would talk about this entrepreneurial drive that is very different to a normal drive that you'd have for other things in your life. Like, it's a certain level of resilience, grit, and just mindset that lets you think outside of the box. So I always kind of wondered, did I have this within myself? Is this something that I could learn? And so a highlight for me in the year was actually recognizing that I did have this entrepreneurial drive, and I was able to, you know, push myself in moments that felt very impossible and achieve milestones that I literally were on my vision board. And moments like that were just like, wow, I'm learning so much about myself. But also another actual highlight was just to see the impact that my business was having on the stakeholders that I interacted with. So from the charities, to the local businesses, to students, to the wider university community, and like the conversations I could have with people. That was a big highlight to me, because I really had that feeling of, wow, this is making somewhat of a difference, or this is doing something more than it being about my own personal motivation. So that was a big highlight for me from that time. In terms of the cons of doing a placement year in general, I honestly, I don't think there's a big cons list. I think probably one of the difficult parts about it is actually the before stages. So actually trying to secure a placement year. Like I touched on earlier, how I kind of was fortunate that my timeline worked out where I could figure out I might as well just run my own business or in March time. But up until that point, I hadn't got any job offers to do a placement year. So that was a big pressure for me to try and secure a role when it was really difficult to do so and it was so competitive. So had I not had this backup plan, I can't predict whether I would have actually gone on a placement year in terms of having secured something later on. Like maybe it would have happened, maybe it wouldn't, but for the timeline that I was going for around March time, I felt so much pressure to have something secured. So that's definitely something that was a con to me, was just the immense amount of pressure to secure something. And then the pros of doing the placement year, there were so many. Like firstly, it was an experience I got to have on my CV and I could talk about in job interviews. Secondly, it was actually being able to put the theory that I'd been learning the past 2 years into practice. And also when I came back for my third year, I actually had things to talk about. I had examples I could think of when we were talking about certain things like marketing techniques or how to manage stakeholders. Like I had my own examples for my business that I could think of and also use as examples when it came to my answers in exams, in seminars, in anything that was in all projects or assignments. So that was really beneficial, because a subject like business is one of those ones where you can learn as much as you want to learn and you can just study all the theory, but the best time to really understand it and to see it is to actually be doing business and to be experiencing it. So working for an organisation and watching how these theories play into practice. That was a massive pro to me, was to see what I was learning actually happen in real life. And the third thing that I would say is that I truly believe my placement year was one of the leading things to getting my internship at Google. So that was a massive pro to me, was to see how something that I was just doing to give it a go could lead to so much more things and open new doors for me. That was a big pro. So I think that's what placement years can do for you, is that it opens doors to places you may have not considered, or for roles that you didn't even know existed, because you're in an organisation, you're like, wow, that team will function, I didn't even know about. So I think that's a really big pro as well. The other question that I've been asked by a few people was to actually say about the support. So like I touched on earlier, I was doing the place, I was running my own business by myself. It can definitely be a lonely experience and something that only other business owners might be able to relate to in certain experiences or challenges you're facing. So when it came for support, I of course had the support of my university. So I had my lecturer from my previous year as essentially a mentor who I could talk about some of the challenges or the wins that I was having and have that support, as well as other people within the university who did different roles. So from like the head of marketing to some legal support, there was always someone that I could ask for advice and get their feedback and just, you know, bounce around ideas with. So that was really a big bonus. And also from my university, the employability team, they checked up on you each month to make sure things were going okay. So I always kind of knew I'd have someone who was like keeping an eye out for my well-being and how I was finding things. And then the other support I got was actually I created myself. So the reason why I say that I created it myself was because I actually just looked onto Eventbrite. I reached out to people that I'd spoken to in the past to ask what groups were they part of, what networking things could I join in so that I can meet other business owners. So I'd wake up at 7 a.m. to go to a networking group that was, you know, a 15-minute walk away, like things like that where I'd find opportunities, apply myself for them. So big ideas where I did a boot camp for 3 days, like I applied for that. I joined like probably every other week I'd go to at least one networking group and I'd start to see familiar faces, and that's how I built my network of other business owners who could really relate to what I was experiencing, and I could also ask them for advice, and some eventually even became like clients. So that was another thing about it when it came to creating support, was that I just learned in order for people to know you're there, you kind of have to make yourself very obvious. So step outside your comfort zone, introduce yourself and just join these different events. So that's basically how I found my support throughout my placement year. Yeah, if I could, I would do it again. Maybe just a few things that I might do differently, but that is the benefit of hindsight. I can think that way, but without knowing what I experienced, I still would do it again. So yeah, that's the end of this video. I hope that talking about my experience with my placement year, although slightly unconventional in the terms of I worked for myself, I hope it gives you an idea about placement years and kind of what you can expect when you embark on them. But if you do have any questions, don't hesitate to comment below. I'm more than happy to answer questions, and if it's something more specific, I can ask my friends who work for organisations to see what their perspective is. But yes, I hope this video has been of use, and if you liked it, hit the like button, subscribe and join me on my journey. Thank you so much for watching.